So today, in today's class, we will be studying the other design principles for the architectural design. We studied some of the design principles. Uh, Now, in today's lecture, we will be studying the other design principles. First of all, what do you design for a building? That is for a particular climate. You design for a particular climate. Now, when you are taking a particular climate, it should be ensured that your house is comfortable and it should maintain heating and cooling uh, properly in the structure. So, when we say a particular climate, it is that your energy consumption in the house should be minimum, both for cooling as well as heating. Your energy consumption should be minimum. We all know that around 40 to 50% of our energy in our houses is utilized for heating and cooling of our houses, whether it be using the fans during summers and any coolers during summers, and then using the heating appliances during winters. When it's a major concern during winters, when the power is also electricity is also less, generation is also less during the winters. So we need to reduce or eliminate the heating and cooling needs of our houses. So that's a challenge for an architect. So you actually need to design an architectural building for efficiency standards, wherein you maintain all the standards and as well as thermal principles for construction. So we would naturally need in our all new houses or buildings, they would need which would be constructed for future. We expect them to have significant, because now there is a trend of that there is a climate change happening. So there is a significant change in the climate that may happen in future. So designing for today's climate is not only important, it's for tomorrow's climate of 30 years. उसके बाद क्या होगा, that we need to focus on कि 30 साल के बाद what should be our uh, what will be the climate of the 30 years, and what we expect, how we expect that our buildings should function. Even our electricity generation, because the population is increasing, so the consumption is increasing, so electricity demands will always keep on increasing. So we need to go for houses which utilize, that's a concept now of passive houses in architecture, or greenhouses in architecture. And the first principle that I told you, the design principle that I told you last time around, was constructing houses for uh, ecologically that would be good and that would have green standards. So you need to maintain an affordability. Yes, somebody is commenting. Am I audible right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was discussing that our houses should maintain energy standards, efficiency standards, because the electricity consumption is actually increasing, and our electricity generation at the same time is decreasing. So we need to go for passive houses. or which I told you last time around, greenhouses. So based on climate, our design principles for architectural requirements should be such that it offers human thermal comfort. It should offer human thermal comfort. And what does this mean? It means that we need to strike a balance between two things. One, on one side, you have कहते हैं उसको तराजू के एक साइड से you have convection happening, you have conduction happening, you have radiation, you have shivering. These are human, and you can just number them 2, 3, 4. You have the radiation, you have the shivering, you have the activity. So these are human comfort indexes. So कमरे में अगर there is convection, there is a fan moving around, so it's leading to convection within the house. Conduction is happening through surfaces within the house. Radiation is happening through the glasses, the window panes within the house. And you're now from these you're getting the human effects, the shivering effect due to cold breeze blowing, then the activity of the human effort. So you have to maintain a temperature, a normal temperature, which has to be somewhere around the body temperature. The deep body temperature of a human body is 37 degrees Celsius. But do we go for 37 degrees Celsius in our houses? No, we do not. We usually keep it between 15 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is comfortable for a human body. So on the other side, there is evaporation happening within the house. So you will have a lot of vapor content within the house, and that may lead to the humid atmosphere within the house. And you might have the opposite radiation happening from the house towards the atmosphere, and that's leading to decrease in temperature within the house. You can have convection effects happening from outside the house, like for example there is a wind blowing from outside the house, and then you have conduction maybe happening in the reverse direction. First it was conduction happening in cold climate from inside of the house towards outside, गर्म सर्दी के मौसम में, और गर्मी के मौसम में बाहर से अंदर. अब you might have materials which may actually lead to this the reverse conduction processes as well. So it's which may actually thermally insulate your house. So that this may be used for striking a balance. So for a human body effect, which is both psychological effect and physiological effects, both, they are dictated by many things. One is you have the temperature, you have the humidity, you have the air movement, you have the exposure to radiant heat source, you have exposure to cool surfaces, so human body is affected by these things: temperature, humidity, air movement, exposure to radiant heat sources, and the exposure to cold surfaces. They are self-explanatory what this means. So they all trigger physiological as well as psychological effects on a human body. For example, you want to study in a cold weather climate, and your temperature in your room is 0 degrees Celsius, and uh, physiological effect is that you even if you have a good heating source in your room, but it's not heating up the whole room at the same time. So you want to sit near the heater all the time, and then you want to take the book near the towards the heater. और उससे ये हो जाता है, now if you have a heater or a blanket over and फिर उसके साथ साथ आप किताब के साथ सोने बैठ जाते हो, so that's a psychological effect, so then there is no activity. तो अक्सर वही हो जाता है, किताब लेते हुए तो सब सो जाते हैं, if somebody has to take a book in his or her hands, तो वो तो साइकोलॉजिकल इफेक्ट है ही, लेकिन कोल्ड क्लाइमेट में जब आपके पास यू हैव नाउ वेयरिंग आप फेरन पहन रहे हो, आपके ऊपर ब्लैंकेट है, देन एंड यू आर यूजिंग अ हीटिंग सोर्स, तो then there is limited activities. So there are effects of such weather on the human body. So moreover, then you also experience the body heat is lost in all three processes of evaporation, radiation, and conduction. Now, this would be good in a warm weather when you have a hot climate, humid climate, you are putting on the fan and evaporation from the body happens and it cools down the body. So it could be good in that weather. So, but at the same time, in during winters, if that is happening, if there is humid atmosphere within the room, or it's not humid, it's and you have removed the humidity from the room, in you can experience more cooling effects during the cold climate. Now, for all these effects, at the same time, you can gain the heat, body heat. Rather than losing, you can also gain. Losing and gaining go hand in hand. Now, if our bodies shiver, what happens? This may because why does the body the heat produces that is produced in our body, that's insufficient to maintain our body temperature, so we shiver. So this automatically then generates heat, body heat, and there is a short-term psychological effect, and that is triggered from our deepest understanding of that psychological discomfort that we have in our body. So what do we experience? The first response, हमारा पहला response क्या होता है to such effects? We put on more clothes जब हम shiver करते हैं. So we want to shelter from wind at the same time and from other effects. So such actions that we experience, and they may be effective for a certain period of time, uh, but because we are generating more heat within our body, and thereby there is a reduction in the heat loss, that's making our heating more effective. So our minds quickly decide whether we want to adjust for thermal comfort or not. So now, why do we want to put our mind and our body to such triggers of losing heat and gaining heat, and it and causing it to become remain in always in a state of discomfort? जुलाई का मौसम आता है, so it's pinching heat, so not tolerable. So people switch on their ACs. Now ACs switch on, there is a electricity consumption happening at the same time. Winters आ जाते हैं, you cannot sit in any other room other than the hammams that we construct here in such cold climate of -10, or you have a Bukhari there in the room. Now, there is never a proper electricity so you can warm up the rooms by alternate means, and there will be a lot of electricity consumption at the same time. If you so why not build our houses for building thermal comfort? So our motto should be the build to have building thermal comfort. For that, this is an architectural requirement. For that, what do we do? What are the main characteristics? And for which seasons should we actually build our houses? So, the first season that we experience is always high humidity, which may be somewhat dry. It's not totally dry, it's somewhat dry. In most parts of the world, you may have humid with dryness as well. So you have moderate to high temperature another season, and you may have another season which is low to moderate temperatures with less humidity. And the fourth season you want to design is for freezing temperatures. And the fifth should be for days and nights. क्योंकि seasons नहीं है, that's a year long happening. दिन और रात में temperature difference, humidity difference is happening year round every day. तो वो होता रहता है. So in its building thermal comfort, we need to maintain these for all these seasons. We need to design our houses. So our houses can have many types of designs. Our objectives should be such that they have different types of designs. One is free running. Now, what is second is conditioned. Third is hybrid design. These are all modern concepts of design processes for our houses, and these should be our objectives for basically designing for all climates, our houses or buildings. So in a free running, the buildings are actually conditioned both. We can condition them mechanically, or we can cool them with the abundant air movement, and that process can continue for hours. Or you can have ventilations, ventilators or ventilation in such houses, plus cross ventilation plus stack ventilation. Now you can cool the atmosphere within the house. How? Through the last one first. It is through the process of stack ventilation. When you're stacking one over the other, that's the stack ventilation. Cross ventilation is so you're placing openings one above the other in stack ventilation. In cross ventilation, you are providing windows on and openings on one side and doors or windows on the other side, such that there is a cross ventilation through the room. And so there is an abundant air movement through the ventilators. So that is the natural process of doing it. But you can also do it mechanically. You can stack them. You can provide an inlet for conditioning through which the air is pumped inside, and there's the exhaust which takes out the extra air within the building. Just a minute. So this is a free run. Then you have the conditioned one. Now, there isn't a major difference between the two, but in this, the buildings are actually insulated. Other than you are providing the ventilation, mechanical or through natural, you are providing buildings with insulation. So when you have insulated rooms within your building, then in that case, you are making the structure. That's the principle that your structure should now be airtight. इसमें हवा अंदर आए, ठीक है, तो बाहर ना निकले. Now there is a misconception. Airtight, तो ऑक्सीजन कहाँ से मिलेगी? This is a misconception. There is abundant oxygen available in our houses already. So airtight does not mean that there is no oxygen. Even if in your small car, if you are sitting in your car and there are even 4 persons in the car, during winters you do not open the windows. Do you open your windows? And it sustains for hours. You can sit in your car and you can keep on getting the oxygen requirements within your car, even when you are not opening, and it's airtight. So that I have felt many people having this misconception that airtight means hawa hi band kar do. There is always a door that is opening from somewhere and the air is actually moving within the house. Now, if there is a congestion in certain places, that you check, and for that, those areas which may have air sealing problems, these oxygen problems, there you provide ventilators, mechanical ventilators, which you switch on the exhaust for a certain period of time and you get an air movement through your house from the outside. And you can also take out the bad odor from your within your house, and that goes into your surroundings. So both inward and outward processes of condensation are also facilitated during this air movement in a well-conditioned house. So this is the principle of a conditioned house. Then third is a hybrid design. In a hybrid design, what you have, that you have air conditions, you have air conditioners, you have insulated core rooms here. And then you have uh, so you could have insulated core rooms, you could have air conditioners, but they together serve as the air conditioner will be provided to a core room, and core room will be connected through an exhaust to the outside assembly. So you have a house structure with an outer. So this all will be insulated, and this is like acting like a vent, and this is insulated. This is insulated here, and you could place an air conditioner somewhere here, and all the that will go through the shaft of this to the outside, and all the fresh air will be circulated through this assembly, through this air conditioner from that shaft. So that's a principle even used in the HVAC system, where you have the air conditioning facility, the ventilation air conditioning facility. So what is it that has conditioned rooms to do with the thermal comfort? Conditioned rooms will maintain low humidity and it will maintain normal temperature between 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. And so you have a proper sleep, no sleep discomforts, you have proper usage of electricity, no additional usage of electricity within your houses. You have a wonderful climate within your house to do your activities, like you want to do your exercises even in the cold weather within your houses. You can do that. You can go for gym at minus 10 degrees Celsius within your house. So you could go for studies in your study room or anywhere designated for that. So you should not be confined to a single room. Even if you have 10 rooms in your house and you are sitting in a one room during winters, that means your house is not properly designed by an architect. That is as simple as that. So this house, the passive house construction, should be the first standard to be maintained by an architect, and that should be cross-checked and cross-verified by a structural engineer as well. Why so? Why should it be cross-checked by a structural or a civil engineer? Because it is the basic responsibility of a civil engineer also to have a thermally insulated, well-maintained house. So architect's first role in the design should be limited to this. So how do we maintain this now? What should be our design considerations? So the first thing is to maintain orientation of the house. So orientation of the house is important. किस डायरेक्शन में कूल ब्रीज चलती है, पोजीशन क्या है आपके घर की, व्हाट इज द पोजीशन ऑफ योर हाउस, what is the landscaping that you are doing around your house. So बाकी buildings, outside buildings, outgoings or out buildings, उनकी लोकेशन कहाँ पर है, to the breeze that is blowing, that is important. So what comes out from this is that the orientation of the house and the position of the house is very important in terms of design criteria for thermal comfort as well as for proper ventilation requirements of the house. Then we need to prioritize. Now we cannot take everything into account. There are so many things involved. आपके SMC के regulations है, you have a structural engineering saying this is not possible. So you have a house nearby, तो वो house owner जो nearby रहता है, he will not allow you to face his building. There may be a house which may be close by और उनको vision problems हो रही है if you construct a house there, and they may not allow that if you're constructing right near the face of their building. So you have to prioritize all your properties, and then the basic priority should be your sleep out spaces, which is not the criteria in our case when we take into account our houses in Kashmir. There are no sleep out houses here, but once you go into Europe, you have the stargazing houses. Many houses have stargazings. So when you go to even into the subcontinent in the Asian countries, you will have houses which will have a terrace, and people would sleep and have been sleeping over years for on the terraces. So they have sleep out spaces there, which is not the criteria in our case here. So they may prioritize sleep out spaces, but in our case, our priority has to be with the thermal insulation of our houses should be proper ventilation of our houses. So we do not prioritize only the sleep out spaces. Next, we also should have shaded outdoors. Now, certain areas in the outdoors which are shaded, which we usually do not provide in our architectural designs in our houses here. We do not keep shading places outside our house. Like you want to construct you have huge gardens in every, at least you have small gardens in every house that we have here. and still we do not utilize it well. We keep it that it should be a proper garden and उसके ऊपर tent लग जाएगा कल को और वो flat होना चाहिए. There should be no landscaping features to that house. We do not provide any sitting areas outside our houses. We may provide sitting areas for chairs and others. We hardly go for shaded outdoor spaces where we can sit during our days and even during the late evenings, and which are good places in your house actually, which are comfortable places where you can do your work and, away from the disturbance from the uh, of your house. So you there could be criteria for locating. If it is a modern contemporary house, you could have areas where you are locating pools, you are locating jacuzzi areas, and you could have places for steam baths and many other things in your new contemporary house designs. And they were in the traditional ones as well, like you had the concept of the hammam baths, and you had the concept of uh, the even in our gardens, if you see, you had the concept of locating gardens on stream side. So you always had that concept, which we have not incorporated into the landscape of our houses. So you basically always want to locate your house you in a proper direction orientation. I'll come to that. What are the various directions of individual rooms and the orientations? But there are certain other criteria as well. The second one is your windows and shading. The windows and shading. This is आपकी windows. You have the glass over it, but there is a you have a big window. तो पूरे दिन धूप अंदर आ रही है. There is a radiation happening through the window pane, and the temperature of the room is keeping on increasing, and you do not want that to happen. You'll all rejoin if you don't have class. Do rejoin if the session is closed.